This way, now move. A woman walks home alone after a long night at the office. The streets are quiet, too quiet. Then, out of nowhere, a man grabs her hand and yells. She stumbles, heart pounding, as he pulls her into the shadows. Behind them, dark figures follow. Who is he? Why does he know about the men tailing her? He tells her only one thing. He saw them watching her from the office building hours ago. No further answers, just silence, and a number scrawled on a napkin. You're watching this for a reason. Maybe it's night where you are, maybe you're just curious, or maybe you're walking home alone too. Before we dive deeper, hit subscribe and tell us where and when you're watching this. And stay with us, because what starts as a chance encounter in the cold streets of Chicago might just turn into something far more dangerous and unexpected. What's your prediction for this story? Chicago's winter night clamped down like a vice, the air sharp enough to cut skin. At 10 o'clock, the city's pulse slowed to a crawl, its streets cloaked in a frost-bitten hush. Emily Watson, 28, bundled in a navy coat, stepped out of the glass tower where she worked as an accountant. Her breath puffed into clouds, dissolving under the amber glow of streetlights. The day had been a marathon of spreadsheets and deadlines, her eyes burning from the screen's glare. All she wanted was her apartment, a glass of wine, and silence. The loop was eerily still, save for the distant hum of a late-night bus and the crunch of her boots on the salted sidewalk. She pulled her scarf tighter, her blonde hair catching the wind as she turned onto a quieter street. The skyscrapers loomed like silent sentinels, their windows dark, reflecting nothing but the cold. Emily's pace quickened, her heels clicking a rhythm against the pavement. She wasn't one for paranoia, but something felt off, a prickle at the base of her neck, like eyes boring into her. She glanced over her shoulder. Nothing, just shadows pooling in the alleys, where the streetlights couldn't reach. Shaking it off, she kept walking, her gloved hands stuffed deep in her pockets. But then she heard it, a faint echo of footsteps, not hers, lagging just behind. Her heart stuttered. She slowed, testing, and the sound stopped. When she moved again, it returned, deliberate, closer. Her pulse surged, a drumbeat in her ears. She turned her head slightly, catching a glimpse in her peripheral vision. 3 figures, clad in black, their faces obscured, trailing her through the maze of Chicago's backstreets. Emily's breath hitched. She forced her legs to move faster, the hollowness of the alley swallowing her footsteps. The men matched her pace, their shadows stretching long and menacing under the flickering lights. Her mind raced. Her phone was buried in her bag, useless now. The nearest busy street was blocks away. Panic clawed at her chest, but she kept moving, her eyes darting for an escape. The alley narrowed, its walls closing in, the air thick with the smell of damp concrete and garbage. A hand grabbed her wrist, yanking her sideways into a side street. She gasped, her scream cut short as a voice, low and urgent, hissed, "Don't scream! Run!" Her eyes locked onto a man, tall, broad-shouldered, his face half lit by a street lamp. His grip was firm but not cruel, his hazel eyes scanning the darkness behind her. "Now," he said, pulling her into a sprint. Emily stumbled but caught her footing, her heart pounding as they tore through the labyrinth of alleys. The man, Jack she'd later learn, moved with purpose, his steps sure, his hand never leaving hers. The footsteps behind them grew louder, closer, the men's shouts slicing through the night. Jack veered sharply, dragging her around a corner, past overflowing dumpsters and rusted fire escapes. Her lungs burned, her legs screaming, but his urgency kept her moving. "Keep up," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. They burst onto a brighter street, the neon sign of a 24/7 bakery glowing like a beacon. Jack shoved the glass door open, the bell jangling wildly as he pulled her inside. Warmth hit her like a wave, the scent of fresh bread and coffee grounding her for a moment. The cashier, a bored teenager, barely looked up from her phone. Jack steered Emily to a corner booth, his eyes flicking to the window. The street outside was empty now, the shadows gone. "Stay here," he said, releasing her hand. His voice was calm but carried an edge, like a blade sheathed but ready. Emily's knees buckled as she sank into the booth, her hands trembling. She stared at him, taking in his rugged features, stubbled jaw, dark hair slightly too long, a leather jacket scuffed at the elbows. He was maybe 32, with a weight in his gaze that spoke of too many sleepless nights. "Who are you?" she managed, her voice shaky. "Why were they after me?" Jack slid into the seat across from her, his eyes still on the window. "Name's Jack Harper. I saw them tailing you from your office building." He paused, his jaw tightening. "They've been watching you for a while." Emily's stomach twisted. "Watching me? Why? Who are they?" He leaned back, his expression unreadable. "I don't know yet, but I've seen them before, lurking around late workers. You're not the first." His words were clipped, offering no comfort. He glanced at her, softening slightly. "You're safe now. That's what matters." "Safe?" She laughed, a brittle sound. "I don't even know you. How do I know you're not with them?" His eyes met hers, steady and unflinching. "If I was, you wouldn't be sitting here." He stood, tossing a few bills on the table for the coffee neither of them had touched. "Stay in public places. Don't walk alone at night. I'll be around if you need me." He turned to leave, but Emily grabbed his sleeve, her fear outweighing her distrust. "Wait, how do I find you?" Jack hesitated, then scrawled a number on a napkin and slid it across the table. "Call if you're in trouble. Only if you're in trouble." He walked out, the bell chiming as the door swung shut behind him. Emily clutched the napkin, her heart still racing. The warmth of the bakery felt like a lie, the fluorescent lights too bright against the darkness outside. She stared at the empty street, the shadows beyond the glass seeming to pulse with menace. Who was Jack Harper? And why did she feel like this was only the beginning? The fluorescent hum of the bakery buzzed in Emily's ears, a stark contrast to the pounding in her chest. The napkin with Jack's number lay crumpled in her fist, its edges damp from her sweaty palms. She stared at the empty street through the bakery's window, half expecting those shadowed figures to reappear. The warmth of the booth, the clatter of a coffee cup being set down by the cashier, felt like a fragile shield against the night's chill. Jack's words echoed in her mind. "They've been watching you for a while." Her stomach churned. She needed answers. "Who the hell are you, Jack Harper?" she muttered under her breath, her voice barely audible over the soft jazz playing in the background. The teenager at the counter glanced up, then back to her phone, oblivious to the storm raging in Emily's head. She smoothed the napkin out, staring at the scrawled digits. Trusting a stranger felt reckless, but so did walking home alone. The bell above the door jingled, making her flinch. It was just a late-night customer, an older man in a wool cap, but her nerves were raw. She stood, her legs unsteady, and approached the counter. "Can I get a coffee? Black," she said, her voice tighter than she intended. The cashier nodded and Emily forced herself to sit back down, clutching the warm cup like an anchor. The door swung open again, and Jack reappeared, his leather jacket glistening with a light dusting of snow. Emily's heart skipped, relief, suspicion, or both, she couldn't tell. He slid into the booth across from her, his expression guarded but softer than before. "Thought you might want company getting home," he said, his voice low, like he was testing the waters. "Why are you doing this?" Emily's words came out sharp, her fear sharpening into defiance. "You don't know me. You show up out of nowhere, save me from God knows what, and now you're back? What's your deal?" Jack leaned forward, elbows on the table, his hazel eyes steady. "I'm not your enemy, Emily. I saw you were in trouble, and I acted. That's it." He paused, glancing at the window as if checking for threats. "Those guys? They're part of a crew. Been hitting women working late around here for weeks. Robbery, sometimes worse. I've been tracking them." Her grip on the coffee cup tightened. "Tracking them? What are you, a cop?" He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Not even close. Ex-Special Forces. Now I do freelance security." His tone was clipped, but there was a weight behind it, a story he wasn't telling. "I don't like bullies. Let's leave it at that." Emily studied him, searching for a lie in his weathered face. The lines around his eyes, the faint scar above his brow, told her he'd seen things she couldn't imagine. "Why me?" she asked, softer now. "Why help me?" Jack's gaze flickered, something raw passing through it before he masked it. Because I could, and because no one should walk home scared. He stood, nodding toward the door. Come on, I'll get you home. She hesitated, then grabbed her bag, the napkin still clutched in her hand. The walk through Chicago's icy streets was quiet, the snow falling heavier now, muffling the city's hum. Jack stayed a step ahead, his eyes scanning every shadow, every alley. Emily watched him, her fear mingling with a grudging gratitude. He was a stranger, but his presence felt like a shield. At her apartment building, a modest brick structure with a flickering entry light, she paused at the door. You didn't have to do this, she said, her breath visible in the cold. I know. Jack shoved his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. But you're not out of the woods yet. Those guys, they don't give up easy. Her stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means be careful. Change your routes. Don't walk alone at night. He handed her another napkin, this one with the same number, rewritten more clearly. Call me if you feel off. Anything. Emily took it, her fingers brushing his. You're not telling me everything, are you? He gave a faint smile, the first she'd seen, but it didn't reach his eyes. Not tonight. He turned, his boots crunching in the snow as he walked away. Lock your door, Emily. She did, the deadbolt clicking with a finality that felt too small for the night's weight. Inside her apartment, the silence was deafening. She sank onto her couch, the napkin in her hand, her mind replaying the chase. Jack's grip, his cryptic warnings. Her life, so predictable, work, home, repeat, had cracked open, exposing something dark and unknown. She poured a glass of wine, but it sat untouched. Instead, she pulled out her laptop, searching for news of robberies in the loop. The articles were sparse but chilling. Women attacked, purses stolen, some hospitalized. No arrests, no clear descriptions. Just shadows like the ones that had chased her. Her phone buzzed, startling her. A text from an unknown number. You okay, Jay? Her thumb hovered over the screen. She didn't know him, didn't trust him, but something about his voice, his steadiness, lingered. She typed back, I'm fine, thanks. Then after a moment, who are you, really? No reply came. She set the phone down, her eyes drifting to the window. The snow fell in slow, heavy flakes, blanketing the city. But beyond her reflection, the darkness felt alive, watching, waiting. She double-checked the lock, her heart uneasy. Jack Harper was a question mark, a man who'd stepped out of the night to pull her from danger. But danger, she sensed, was far from done with her. A week had passed since the chase through Chicago's icy alleys, but the weight of that night clung to Emily like frost on her skin. She'd changed her routes home, weaving through busier streets, her eyes darting to every shadow, every stranger. The city, once a backdrop to her routine, now felt like a maze of threats. The hum of her office's fluorescent lights, the clack of her keyboard, couldn't drown out the memory of those footsteps, or Jack Harper's cryptic warning, they don't give up easy. Tonight she left work earlier, the sky a bruised purple as she hurried to the bus stop. Her scarf was pulled tight, her breath quick and shallow. A rustle behind her, a passerby kicking a can, sent her heart racing. She scanned the street, half expecting to see those figures in black. Nothing, just the city's pulse, indifferent and relentless. Still, the prickle at her neck wouldn't fade, like an unseen gaze tracking her every step. By the time she reached her apartment, her hands shook as she fumbled with her keys. Inside, she leaned against the door, the silence of her home both a relief and a cage. She pulled out her phone, Jack's number staring back at her. She'd hesitated all week, torn between distrust and the nagging sense that he was her only lifeline. Finally, her thumb pressed the call button. Emily? His voice was low, alert, like he'd been waiting. You okay? I don't know. Her words stumbled out. I keep feeling like someone's watching me. I changed my route, like you said, but it's still there. Footsteps, shadows. Am I going crazy? A pause then. You're not crazy. Meet me at the Beanery on Clark Street. 20 minutes. Can you make it? She nodded, forgetting he couldn't see her. Yeah, I'll be there. The Beanery was a cozy pocket of warmth, its windows fogged against the winter chill. the air thick with the scent of roasted coffee. Emily arrived first, claiming a corner table, her fingers tapping nervously on the chipped wood. When Jack walked in, his presence seemed to shift the room's gravity. He wore the same scuffed leather jacket, his dark hair dusted with snow. He scanned the cafe before sitting across from her, his hazel eyes searching her face. "You look spooked," he said, not unkindly. "Tell me what happened." She recounted the week, the fleeting shadows, the footsteps that stopped when she did, the unshakable feeling of being hunted. Her voice wavered, but she pressed on, needing him to understand. "I don't know what to do. I can't keep living like this." Jack leaned back, his jaw tight. "They're testing you, seeing if you'll crack." He hesitated, then leaned forward, his voice dropping. "I need to tell you something. About why I'm in this?" Emily's breath caught. "Go on." He glanced around, ensuring no one was listening. "My sister, Lily, she was 24, worked late at a law firm downtown. 3 years ago, a crew like the one after you got to her. Robbery gone wrong. She didn't make it." His voice cracked just for a moment before he steadied it. "I wasn't there. I should have been. Now I make sure no one else goes through that." Emily's chest tightened, her fear mingling with empathy. "I'm so sorry, Jack." He shook his head, brushing it off. "Point is, these guys don't stop. They pick targets, women like you, working late, alone. I've been tracking them since Lily. They're careful, but I'm close to nailing them." She stared at him, seeing the pain etched into his features, the weight he carried. "Why didn't you tell me this before? You didn't need my baggage. You needed to stay alive." He sipped his coffee, his eyes never leaving hers. "But you're in this now, and I need you to trust me." "Trust you?" She gave a small, bitter laugh. "I don't even know you." "Fair." He leaned closer, his voice earnest. "Then let me earn it. I can teach you how to protect yourself. Basic self-defense. Enough to give you a fighting chance." Emily hesitated. Her life was numbers, spreadsheets, order. Not this world of shadows and danger. But the fear gnawing at her, the memory of those footsteps, pushed her forward. "Okay, teach me." Jack's expression softened, a flicker of relief. "Good. We'll start this weekend. Somewhere open, safe. I'll text you the details." They sat in silence for a moment, the cafe's chatter filling the space. Emily found herself studying him, the way his hands gripped the mug, the faint scar above his brow. He wasn't just a stranger anymore. He was a man haunted, like her. "What's it like?" she asked suddenly. "Living like this? Always looking over your shoulder?" He gave a wry smile. "Lonely? You?" She looked down at her coffee, her reflection distorted in the dark liquid. "Same. Work's my life. No family here. Friends. Drifted away. I didn't realize how alone I was until last week." Jack nodded, like he understood too well. "You're not alone now. Not if you don't want to be." The words hung between them, simple but heavy. Emily felt a spark of something. Connection, maybe, or just the comfort of not facing the dark alone. She nodded, her voice soft. "Thanks, Jack." He stood, pulling on his jacket. "Get home safe. Text me when you're locked in." He paused at the door, glancing back. "And Emily, keep your eyes open." She watched him disappear into the snowy night, the cafe's warmth fading as reality crept back in. The walk home was tense, her senses sharp, but no shadows followed. Inside her apartment, she locked the door, her phone buzzing as she typed, "Home, safe." Jack's reply was instant. "Good. See you Saturday." Emily sank onto her couch, the weight of the week pressing down. Jack's story about Lily had cracked something open in her, a mix of fear and resolve. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She'd learned to fight back, to face the shadows. But as she stared at the napkin with his number, a question lingered. Could she trust Jack Harper, or was she stepping deeper into a darkness she couldn't escape? The weekend arrived with a biting wind that swept through Chicago's streets, rattling the bare branches in the park near Emily's apartment. She stood on a patch of frozen grass, her breath clouding in the pale morning light, her nerves a tangle of anticipation and dread. Jack's text had been brief. "Lincoln Park, 9 a.m. Wear something you can move in." Now here she was, in sneakers and a fleece jacket, watching Jack stride toward her, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. His presence, steady and unyielding, was both a comfort and a reminder of the shadows that had driven her here. "Ready?" he asked, his voice cutting through the wind. His hazel eyes scanned her, not judgmental but assessing, like a coach is sizing up a recruit. Emily nodded, though her stomach twisted. "As I'll ever be." He dropped the bag, pulling out a pair of worn boxing gloves. "We'll start simple. Escapes, deflections, using what you got." He gestured to her purse, slung across her body. "That's a weapon if you know how to use it." She raised an eyebrow, a flicker of amusement breaking her tension. "My purse? Seriously?" "Dead serious." Jack's lips twitched. Not quite a smile. "Swing it hard enough, it's like a brick. Keys, too. Aim for the eyes or throat." He stepped closer, his tone shifting to instructor mode. "First escaping a grab. Most attacks start with them trying to control you, like this." Before she could react, he gripped her wrist. Not hard, but firm enough to make her pulse spike. Her instinct was to pull back, but he held steady. "Don't yank away. Twist toward my thumb, fast." He guided her hand, showing the motion. "Try it." Emily did, her wrist slipping free with surprising ease. She grinned despite herself. "Okay, that's kinda cool." "Kind of," he smirked, stepping back. "Again, harder this time." They worked through the morning, Jack teaching her to break holds, dodge grabs, and use her elbows like daggers. His instructions were precise, his movements fluid, like he'd done this 1,000 times. But there was a gentleness, too, in the way he corrected her stance, his hands steadying her shoulders without lingering. The cold bit at her fingers, but the exertion warmed her, and for the first time in a week, she felt a spark of control. Between drills, they caught their breath, leaning against a park bench. Emily's cheeks were flushed, her laughter surprising her as Jack mimicked her awkward first attempt at a palm strike. "You looked like you were swatting a fly," he teased, his eyes crinkling. "Hey, I'm new at this." She shoved his arm playfully, then froze, startled by her own ease with him. He noticed, his smile fading into something softer, more guarded. "You're doing good," he said quietly. "Most people would have stayed scared. You're fighting back." The praise warmed her more than the exercise. "I don't feel brave, just tired of being afraid." She hesitated, then asked, "How do you do it? Carry what happened to Lily and still keep going?" Jack's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the city skyline cut against the gray sky. "You don't. Not really. You just find something to fight for." He looked back at her, his eyes raw. "Right now, that's you, and others like you." Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to say something, but the words felt too big, too fragile. Instead, she nodded, the moment hanging between them like a shared secret. Later, at her apartment, she insisted he stay for dinner. "It's the least I can do," she said, stirring a pot of pasta in her small kitchen. The space felt warmer with him there, his jacket slung over a chair, his presence filling the room. Over plates of spaghetti they talked, not about shadows or danger, but about simpler things. Her love of old jazz records, his habit of reading dog-eared thrillers. The conversation flowed, easy and unguarded, until Jack's tone shifted. "I've been working on those guys," he said, setting down his fork. "The ones after you. Got photos, recordings, patterns. They're careful, but not careful enough." He pulled out his phone, showing her blurry images of men in dark hoods, time-stamped late at night. "I'm close to pinning them down, but I need more to hand over to the cops." Emily leaned forward, her accountant's brain kicking in. "What kind of patterns? Like times, places?" He nodded, impressed. "Exactly. They hit specific blocks, usually between 10 and midnight. Women alone leaving offices. I've mapped some of it, but it's messy. Let me help." The words were out before she could stop them. "I'm good with data. I can organize it, find the gaps." Jack studied her, a mix of surprise and caution in his eyes. "You sure? This isn't your fight." "It is now." Her voice was firm, fueled by the memory of those footsteps, the weight of his story about Lily. "I'm in." He held her gaze, then nodded. "All right, we'll go through it tomorrow. My place. I've got a board with everything pinned up." As he helped clear the dishes, their hands brushed, and Emily felt a jolt. Not fear, but something warmer, riskier. She caught his eye, and for a moment, neither looked away. "Thanks," she said softly, "for today, for all of it." Jack's expression softened, but he stepped back, grabbing his jacket. "Get some rest. We've got work to do." At the door, he paused. "Lock up tight, okay?" She did, the click of the deadbolt grounding her. Alone again, she stood in her quiet apartment, the ghost of his presence lingering. The fear was still there, coiled in her chest, but so was something new. Resolve, maybe, or the faint glow of trust. Jack Harper was no longer just a stranger. He was a partner, a protector, and maybe something more. But as she glanced at the photos he'd shown her, the faceless men in hoods, she knew the shadows were still out there, waiting, and tomorrow she'd start fighting back. The dim glow of a desk lamp cast long shadows across Emily's apartment, the air thick with the scent of coffee and the faint hum of the city outside. She sat at her dining table, surrounded by papers, Jack's notes, maps, and grainy photos of hooded figures. Her laptop screen glowed with spreadsheets, her accountant's precision turning chaos into patterns. Jack leaned over her shoulder, his breath warm as he pointed to a pinned location on a map. "Here," he said, his voice low. "They hit this block 3 times last month, always after 10. Emily's fingers danced across the keyboard, cross-referencing dates and locations. "It's not random," she said, her eyes narrowing. "They stick to a grid. 4 blocks, rotating pattern. They avoid cameras, but they're predictable." She turned to him, a spark of triumph in her gaze. "We can use this." Jack's lips twitched, a flicker of admiration breaking his usual stoic mask. "You're good at this. Ever think about switching careers?" She snorted, brushing a strand of blonde hair from her face. "I like numbers, not chasing criminals. But this," she tapped the screen, "this feels right." They'd been at it for hours, piecing together the crew's movements. Jack's evidence, recordings of muffled voices, timestamps, even a license plate, was scattered but damning. Emily's knack for structure had turned it into a timeline, a blueprint of the predators haunting Chicago's nights. But the more they uncovered, the clearer it became. Evidence alone wasn't enough. The police needed to act. Jack straightened, rubbing the back of his neck. "We need them caught in the act, something undeniable." His eyes met hers, hesitant but resolute. "I've got an idea, but you're not gonna like it." Emily's stomach tightened. "What kind of idea?" He sat across from her, the lamp casting his face in sharp angles. "We set a trap. Use their pattern against them. You walk the old route, the alley off State Street. I'll be close, with a buddy from the force, Mike. He's off duty, but trust me, we'll take them down before they touch you." Her heart stuttered, the memory of that night. Footsteps, shadows, her pulse pounding, flooding back. "You want me to be bait?" Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled, betraying her fear. Jack leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "Only if you're in. I won't push you. But this could end it, Emily. No more looking over your shoulder." She stared at the map, the red pins marking the crew's hits like bloodstains. The fear was there, sharp and cold, but so was something else. A fire kindled by Jack's lessons, by the thought of Lily, by her refusal to be a victim. "What's the plan?" she asked, her voice firmer now. Jack outlined it. She'd walk the alley at 11, wearing a scarf to signal it was her. He and Mike would tail her, hidden but close, ready to strike when the crew moved in. "I'll be 10 steps behind you," he said. "You won't see me, but I'll be there. Mike's got a radio to call for backup. We'll get them." Emily nodded, her throat tight. "And if something goes wrong?" His hand reached across the table, covering hers. The touch was brief but electric, grounding her racing thoughts. "Nothing goes wrong. I promise you that." His eyes held hers, a vow in their depths. "I've got you." The moment lingered, the air between them charged. Emily felt her cheeks warm, her fear tangled with something softer, riskier. She pulled her hand back, clearing her throat. "Okay, I'm in." "When?" "Tomorrow night," Jack said. "We'll go over every detail before you step out. You'll know exactly what to do." They spent the next hour refining the plan, Emily's nerves fraying but her resolve holding. She mapped the route on her phone, memorizing escape paths, while Jack drilled her on the self-defense moves they'd practiced. "If they get close, you know what to do," he said, mimicking a wrist twist. "But they won't. I'll make sure of it." As they packed up, Jack lingered by the door, his jacket slung over his arm. "You don't have to do this, you know," he said quietly. "I can find another way." Emily shook her head, her jaw set. "I want this over. For me, for you, for Lily." The name felt heavy, a bridge between them. "I trust you, Jack." His expression softened, a rare vulnerability breaking through. "Good, because I'm not letting anything happen to you." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You're tougher than you think, Emily Watson." She smiled, small but genuine. "Maybe I'm learning." He left, the door clicking shut behind him, and Emily stood in the quiet of her apartment. The papers on the table, the map with its red pins, stared back at her. Her heart raced at the thought of tomorrow, walking that alley, hearing those footsteps again. But Jack's promise, his touch, lingered like a shield. She wasn't alone anymore. She sank onto her couch, pulling her knees to her chest. The city hummed beyond her window, its lights flickering like distant stars. Tomorrow she'd step into the dark, not as prey but as a hunter. The fear was still there, coiled tight, but so was a new strength, forged in the hours with Jack, in the choice to fight back. She closed her eyes, picturing his steady gaze, and for the first time in weeks, she felt ready to face the shadows. The alley off State Street swallowed the city's light, its narrow walls a tunnel of damp concrete and flickering shadows. Emily's boots echoed softly, each step a deliberate act of courage as she moved through the cold Chicago night. Her scarf, a bright red signal against her dark coat, fluttered in the wind. Her heart pounded, a relentless drum in her chest, but she kept her pace steady, her eyes scanning the darkness. Jack's voice echoed in her mind. 10 steps behind you. I've got you." She clung to that promise, her only anchor in the suffocating tension. The plan was simple but perilous. She'd walk the crew's hunting ground, baiting them to strike. Jack and Mike, his off-duty cop friend, would be waiting ready to pounce. Her phone tucked in her pocket was set to record, a backup if things went south. Every detail had been drilled into her. Stay visible. Keep moving. Trust Jack. But as the wind howled through the alley, carrying the faint stench of garbage, doubt gnawed at her. What if they were faster? What if Jack was too far? A sound, sharp, like a shoe-scuffing pavement, snapped her focus. Her breath hitched, but she kept walking, her hand tightening around the keys in her pocket, their jagged edges a small comfort. The sound came again, closer, deliberate. Footsteps, multiple, echoing behind her. Her pulse surged, but she forced herself to stay calm, remembering Jack's training. Don't look back. It slows you down. She quickened her pace, the alley's end a faint glow ahead. Then a low voice, mocking, cut through the dark. "Hey, sweetheart, where are you going so fast?" Her stomach lurched. 3 figures emerged from the shadows, their black hoods blending with the night, their steps closing in. She caught a glint of metal in one's hand. A knife, maybe worse. Panic clawed at her, but she kept moving, her eyes locked on the distant streetlight. "Now!" Jack's shout shattered the silence. A blur of motion erupted as he lunged from a side alley, tackling the nearest figure. The man hit the ground hard, a grunt escaping as Jack pinned him. Another turned, swinging wildly, but Mike was there, his badge flashing under his jacket as he barked, "Police! Hands up!" The third man charged at Emily, his face twisted in a snarl. Instinct kicked in. She ducked, swinging her purse like Jack had taught her, the heavy bag connecting with his jaw. He stumbled, cursing, and she twisted away, her keys raised like claws. Before he could recover, Jack was on him, wrenching his arm back until he dropped to his knees. The scuffle was chaos. Grunts, shouts, the crack of fists meeting flesh. Emily backed against the wall, her breath ragged, her eyes darting between Jack's fierce precision and Mike's commands. The fight ended as fast as it began. Mike cuffed one man, his radio crackling as he called for backup. Jack held another down, his knee pressed into the man's back, his face a mask of controlled fury. The third, dazed from Emily's blow, was slumped against a dumpster, groaning. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, a lifeline cutting through the night. Emily's legs buckled, and she slid down the wall, her hands trembling. Jack was at her side in an instant, his hands on her shoulders, his eyes searching hers. "You okay?" His voice was rough, urgent. "Did they touch you?" She shook her head, tears burning her eyes. "I'm fine," she whispered, but her voice broke. The fear, the adrenaline, the relief, it crashed over her like a wave. She threw her arms around him, burying her face in his jacket, the leather cold against her cheek. He stiffened, then wrapped an arm around her, his grip steady, grounding. "You did good," he murmured, his breath warm against her hair. "You were brave." She pulled back, wiping her eyes, a shaky laugh escaping. "I was terrified." "Brave's not the absence of fear," he said, his voice soft but firm. "It's doing it anyway." Police cars screeched to a stop at the alley's mouth, their lights painting the walls red and blue. Mike handed off the cuffed men, his voice sharp as he briefed the officers. Emily watched, still clutching Jack's arm, as the crew was loaded into a squad car. One of them, the knife wielder, glared at her, his eyes burning with hate. She shivered, but Jack stepped in front of her, blocking the man's view. "They're done," he said, his tone final. "Mike's got enough on them. Your recording, my photos, the pattern, they're linked to a dozen other hits. They're not walking free." An EMT arrived, insisting Jack get checked for a gash on his forehead from the brawl. He waved them off, but Emily pushed him toward the ambulance. "You're bleeding, idiot," she said, her voice steadier now. He smirked but complied, sitting on the ambulance's edge as the medic cleaned the wound. In the quiet of the ambulance's glow, Emily sat beside him, her hand finding his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and calloused, a silent promise. "You kept your word," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't let me face this alone." He looked at her, his hazel eyes softer now, the weight of the night lifting just a fraction. "And I won't. Not ever." His thumb brushed her knuckles, a small gesture that sent warmth through her chest. The police lights faded as the squad cars pulled away, the alley returning to its eerie stillness. Emily leaned against Jack, the cold night air sharp against her skin. The fear wasn't gone. It lingered, a shadow she'd carry. But for the first time, she felt its grip loosen. She'd faced the dark and come out standing, and with Jack beside her, she knew she could face it again. 3 months had passed since the night in the alley, but its echoes lingered in Emily's quieter moments. The city's pulse no longer felt like a threat, though she still checked her locks twice. She stood now in a small office on Chicago's north side, sunlight slanting through dusty blinds, illuminating a cluttered desk and a whiteboard scrawled with schedules. Jack's office, now their office, was a far cry from her old accounting cubicle. She'd traded spreadsheets for something messier, more vital, helping Jack build his fledgling security business, managing its finances with the same precision she'd once reserved for corporate ledgers. The office smelled of coffee and leather, Jack's jacket slung over a chair as he paced, phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah, Mike, we'll have the new client contract by Monday," he said, his voice steady but warm, a tone she'd grown to know well. He hung up, catching her eye with a half smile. "You're staring." "You're pacing," she countered, her lips twitching. "Makes it hard to focus on these invoices." He chuckled, dropping into the chair across from her. "Fair. How's it looking?" "Better than last month. You might pay me on time." Her teasing hid a deeper truth. Working with Jack had given her purpose, a tether to something beyond her old, solitary routine. Their relationship, still new, was a quiet thing, kept under wraps from their small team. A stolen glance here, a brush of hands there, small sparks that warmed her through the city's lingering chill. Jack leaned back, his hazel eyes softening. "You didn't sign up for this, you know. Bookkeeping for a guy who barely knows how to file taxes." "I signed up for you," she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. His expression shifted, a flicker of surprise giving way to something deeper, unguarded. She cleared her throat, nodding to the whiteboard. Those self-defense classes you're starting. How many signed up? 15 so far. Mostly women from the neighborhood. His voice took on a new edge, a mix of pride and resolve. After what happened, I want them to feel what you felt, like they can fight back. Emily nodded, her mind flashing to the alley, to the weight of her purse swinging, the rush of standing her ground. Jack's classes, offered free to anyone who showed up, were his way of honoring Lily, of turning pain into action. She'd seen him teach the first session last week, patient, firm, his strength tempered with care. It was the same gentleness he showed her, the kind that made her heart ache and hope in equal measure. The day wound down and they locked up, stepping into the crisp evening air. The city hummed around them, its lights brighter now that the shadows held less power. They walked to Lincoln Park, the same place where Jack had taught her to fight. The trees were bare, the ground dusted with early snow, but the park felt alive, its quiet beauty a stark contrast to the chaos of that night months ago. Jack stopped near a bench, his hands in his pockets, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice low, almost nervous, "about us, about what comes next." Emily's heart skipped, her breath catching. "Next?" He turned to her, the streetlights casting his face in soft gold. "You changed everything, Emily. I was just existing before you, chasing ghosts, fighting shadows. But you made me want more." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small box. Her breath stopped as he opened it, revealing a simple silver ring, its edges worn but shining. "It's not fancy, was my mom's, but I want you to have it, if you'll have me." Her eyes stung, tears blurring the lights around them. She'd spent so long guarding herself, against fear, against loss. But Jack had broken through, steady and sure. "Jack," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Are you sure?" He stepped closer, his hand finding hers, his touch warm against the cold. "I've never been more sure. You're my partner, Emily. In this fight, in everything. Marry me." She laughed, a shaky, joyful sound, and nodded. "Yes, son, yes, I will." He slid the ring onto her finger, its weight unfamiliar but perfect. She threw her arms around him, his jacket cool against her cheek, his heartbeat steady under her ear. They stood there, wrapped in each other, the city fading to a hum. As they pulled back, Jack's smile was wide, unguarded, a rare glimpse of the man beneath the scars. "We're gonna be okay, you know," he said, his thumb brushing her cheek. "You and me." "I know," she said, her voice firm despite the tears, "because we're not alone anymore." They walked back through the park, hand in hand, the snow falling softly around them. Emily glanced at the ring, its silver catching the light, a promise forged in the dark, but born in the light. She thought of the women who'd come to Jack's classes, of the community they were building, of the fear they'd both faced and overcome. The shadows were still out there, but they were smaller now, less daunting. With Jack beside her, Emily felt ready, not just to survive, but to live. The backyard of Jack's modest Chicago home glowed under a tapestry of moonlight and strung lanterns, their soft light dancing across the faces of the small gathering. Emily stood in a simple white dress, her blonde hair loose, catching the silver glow. Her heart fluttered, not with fear but with a quiet joy that felt like a victory. Jack faced her, his usual leather jacket traded for a dark suit, his hazel eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made the world shrink to just the two of them. The air was crisp, the scent of pine and winter grass mingling with the warmth of the moment. Their hands were clasped, fingers intertwined, the silver ring on Emily's finger a steady reminder of the path they'd walked to reach this night. The officiant, a friend of Jack's from his army days, spoke softly, his words weaving a promise into the stillness. "Do you, Emily Watson, take Jack Harper to be your partner, to stand together through light and dark, to protect and be protected?" "I do," she said, her voice clear, unwavering. She squeezed Jack's hand, feeling the calluses that told his story. Fights fought, lives saved, a heart scarred but open. His smile, rare and radiant, broke through, and she felt her own lips curve in response. "And you, Jack Harper," the officiant continued, Do you take Emily to be your partner? To walk beside her? To face every shadow as one? I do, Jack said, his voice low but fierce, like a vow carved in stone. Always. He lifted her hand, pressing a kiss to her knuckles, and the small crowd, friends, colleagues, women from the self-defense classes, murmured their approval, a ripple of warmth in the cold night. They exchanged rings, simple bands that matched the one Jack's mother had given, their weight a promise of permanence. The officiant stepped back, and Jack pulled Emily close, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was both tender and defiant, a declaration against the darkness they'd faced. The crowd erupted in cheers, the sound mingling with the clink of glasses and the soft strum of a guitar played by one of Jack's old squad mates. The backyard was alive with laughter, the lanterns casting a golden glow over tables laden with food, homemade lasagna, bottles of wine, and a cake Emily had insisted on baking herself. Among the guests were women from the neighborhood, their faces bright with gratitude, their presence a testament to the classes Jack and Emily had built together. One, a young nurse named Sarah, caught Emily's eye and raised a glass, her smile saying more than words could. Emily leaned against Jack as they moved to the center of the yard, the music slowing to a gentle melody. They swayed, her head resting on his chest, his heart beat a steady rhythm beneath her ear. "This feels like a dream," she whispered, her voice catching. "After everything, the alley, the fear, I didn't think we'd get here." Jack's arms tightened around her, his breath warm against her hair. "We earned this, Emily. Every second." He pulled back, his eyes searching hers. "You made me believe in something again. Something good." She smiled, tears pricking her eyes. "You gave me courage, Jack. I was so afraid, so alone. Now I'm home." They danced under the moon, the city's hum a distant backdrop to their quiet vows. The guests faded into the background, their laughter a soft hum as Emily and Jack held each other, the weight of their past lighter now, shared and softened by love. She thought of the night they met, the chase through the alleys, the way his hand had steadied her. She thought of Lily, whose loss had shaped him, and the women they'd helped, whose strength mirrored her own. The darkness hadn't vanished. It never would, but it no longer ruled them. As the song ended, Jack led her to a quiet corner of the yard, where the lantern's glow gave way to moonlight. "We're not done, you know," he said, his voice low, earnest. "The classes, the community. We keep going. We keep fighting for them." Emily nodded, her hand finding his. "Together. Always." He kissed her again, softer this time, a promise sealed under the stars. The night stretched on, filled with stories and laughter, the clink of glasses raised to their future. Sarah, the nurse, approached, her eyes bright. "You two changed things," she said. "I don't walk home scared anymore. Thank you." Emily's throat tightened, and she squeezed Jack's hand. "We're just getting started," she said, her voice steady with purpose. As the guests began to drift away, Emily and Jack stood at the edge of the yard, watching the lanterns flicker against the night. The moon hung low, its light a quiet blessing. They'd faced shadows together, turned fear into strength, and built something new, a life, a love, a mission. Emily leaned into him, her heart full, the city's pulse no longer a threat, but a song of possibility. "Let's keep the light on," she said, her voice a vow of its own. Jack smiled, pulling her close. "Always, Emily, always." The music faded, the lanterns dimmed, but their promise burned bright, a beacon against the dark. And as they stood together, hand in hand, they knew they'd carry that light forward, for each other, for their community, for anyone still afraid of the shadows. The Night Watch weaves a tale of fear transformed into courage, of two souls finding light in the darkest alleys. Emily and Jack's journey, from terror to triumph, from strangers to partners, reminds us that strength grows in unity and love conquers shadows. Thank you for joining their story, for walking with them through Chicago's icy nights. What did their fight spark in you? Share your thoughts, your voice matters. Until we meet again in another tale, keep your light burning bright and face the dark with heart. See you soon, brave reader.